words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable unto you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. The notion isn't exactly new. In fact, I can remember as a child my Lutheran from the womb grandmother asserting its plausibility. She was convinced that a God as big as ours wouldn't only choose one little speck of a planet on which to inhabit life. She figured there had to be others, and we just hadn't discovered it yet. Well, did you see the headline on Thursday in the Miami Herald? 7 Earth-sized worlds found orbiting star could hold life. Yep. There's a single star out there, TRAPPIST-1, less than 40 light years away, almost a neighbor when it comes to space worlds. And 7 of these planets that orbit the star, of those 7, 3 of them are in what's called the habitable zone. So clearly more study is needed to find out if any of these actually sustain life, but the scientific community is clearly very, very excited. If nothing else, the mere existence of this group of planets suggests that surely there must be other groups of them as well. A NASA administrator was quoted, "Finding a second Earth is not just a matter of if, but when." So now the next phase of inquiry begins. I read that chemical analysis can give us a reasonable assessment of whether or not a place is hospitable for life or not. But what kind of life? Well, that would be another topic. The closing sentence of the article I read anyway said, "We will never be completely sure without going there." So why am I recounting this headline? Well, first of all, I am so struck by human beings and how we can make these amazing discoveries and experience these mind-bending revelations. We examine our surroundings, we formulate discoveries, and we answer questions that help us to learn more about ourselves and the cosmos. And yet, mystery abounds. We'll never be completely sure without going there, says that scientist, and that's almost 40 light years away, 229 trillion miles. Even if we could travel at the speed of light, it would take us 39 years just to get there. So clearly, we're not going to be able to get there and see firsthand. So TRAPPIST-1 is generating this whole new litany of questions about life beyond Earth. One question answered unleashes this whole other set of additional questions. No wonder people say ignorance is bliss. Because sometimes new information causes us to go places we hadn't anticipated in our spirits and engage topics we'd rather leave alone. Whatever it was that the disciples experienced on that transfiguration moment, I suspect it rocked their world and brought them into places that they hadn't considered engaging. If you've been here in recent weeks, you know that we've been in the Sermon on the Mount for 4 weeks now, chapters 5 through 7. Well, we just took a big jump to chapter 17. So Jesus has been healing and preaching for a while now. He's had altercations with some of his opponents. And just verses before the text we read this morning, Jesus speaks about picking up one's cross and following him. That's what discipleship is all about. And he makes his first of a few of his predictions of his death and rising. He's going to do so again before chapter 17 even ends. And in the middle of all this, Matthew recounts this story. Jesus brings Peter, James, and John up to a high mountain. Now in Luke, we hear that they go up to pray. Not in Matthew. In Matthew, it's just enough to go up on a mountain. If you go up on a mountain in Matthew, something important is going to happen. Whether it's the Sermon on the Mount, or even back in Exodus, how we read how Moses goes up a mountain to Mount Sinai. An important thing is about to happen. In Jesus' case, he goes up, and then the word is transfigured in front of these 3 disciples. We can translate that word as transformed, as having an appearance change or a form change. The writer describes Jesus' face as shining like the sun, and his clothes become dazzling white. Some other translations say Jesus is white as the light, evoking this revelation of his inner reality. The disciples also have this other vision of Jesus in conversation with Moses and Elijah. And then, of course, there's that voice that says, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." So whether you hear this transfiguration story as literal occurrence or poetic truth, like discovering 7 planets out there 40 light years away, it answers some questions for Peter, James, and John. They learn that Jesus exudes an inner spirit of truth and purity. They learn that somehow he's connected to the law through Moses and to the prophets through Elijah. And then they learn through that voice that Jesus somehow is this expression of the divine, God's Son, and that he's to be heeded, listened to. They must figure they're on the right track, being followers of Jesus. But there's also evidence to suggest that just as much as the transformation reveals, that it also obscures, that mystery abounds. Think about those dramatic details. The 3 men want to get busy building booths because they're going to need some more time to unpack what just happened. And then even that voice that comes, there's a light, but then did you read? There's also a shadow. What does it all mean? And then after this whole thing happens, what do they do but fall down in fear? And Jesus hardly tells them, don't worry about it. He says, don't be afraid, but he also says, don't tell anybody anything about this until after I've died and risen again. So Jesus seems just fine with keeping this whole thing a secret. What is that about? Do you see today's story? It's both revelatory and mysterious. It shows forth and it obscures. It explains and it confounds. So what do we do with it? Do we make sure we put it in that category of one of those weird Bible stories that we don't mention at our next dinner party? Brothers and sisters, I would contend that this can have something to do with our lives, and we do well to engage it. I realize it's not straightforward like the Sermon on the Mount. It's not a set of instructions or behaviors for us to follow. It doesn't tell us how to live or what to say. But I do believe that it calls upon us in a very real sense to engage the mystery that is God. And this can and should be a lifelong pursuit. Like scientists who study the universe and make discoveries that lead to more study, the story of the Transfiguration tells us something about Jesus' identity, but it compels us to dig deeper. It tells us that Jesus is connected to the precepts of the law and the prophets, but it doesn't say how. It tells us that the nature of God is revealed through him in glorious triumph. But it doesn't tell us what it means. It tells us that Jesus lived and died among us, but it doesn't tell us what it means about our own lives and deaths. Perhaps most critical, though, we did hear loud and clear, listen to him. So that's what we need to do. Pay attention. Not reject God, not relegate the story of faith to some quaint little aspect of a pre-scientific age, but engage the mystery. I often say to folks, as your pastor, I don't see myself as one to stand here and give you answers. I'm a sojourner like you. I'm here to lead us, to discern answers in our own spirits. I'm here to help you ask different questions, deeper questions, more profound questions as you become satisfied with the answers to this set. Do you see? The mystery abounds and it continues. It is a perpetual engagement, and I would contend that ignorance is not bliss, because it's engaging that perpetual mystery of who we are and where we came from and where we are going. That, to me, is one of the most basic statements of faith. In fact, I don't find it any accident that in Mark and in Matthew, the very next story after the transfiguration is the healing of the epileptic boy. And in Mark, that's where this man comes to Jesus and he says, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And so it is for us as well. Lord, I believe, but there's so much mystery. Help my unbelief. We can come to God with the mysteries and all the questions, and we can trust when we listen that God will bless us. Do you know, from the mountaintop of transfiguration today, we are plunged by Wednesday into the valley of Lent. And that strikes me as so appropriate and so very timely, because we bring this glorious, revelatory mystery of the greatness of Jesus, pronouncing the light and truth of all time once everybody hears about it. And we bring that alongside the brokenness of life, the limitation that is you and me. We examine our lives alongside the transcendent mystery of God, asking questions over the next 40 days, probing answers, engaging faith as a source of purpose and meaning and strength, all the while recognizing, like those scientists, that we'll never be completely sure until we go there and see God face to face. Mystery abounds. I'd say that's the most basic statement of faith. I am not an end in myself. There's more. Thanks be to God. Amen. So now may the words of my, may God bless you and keep you.